Hi, I'm Phil.
And I'm Lauren, and we're Live Transformed.
So we pick up in the story of Abraham and his family. Last week we talked about Jacob and Esau, and we saw Jacob as the deceiver, Esau as the hairy red man who likes to hunt in the woods, and Esau was his father's favorite, and Jacob was his mother's favorite. Mm-hmm. And there was a storyline of deception and lying and anger and frustration and all the things that we see when we watch a soap opera, pretty much. Hey, if you want to support Live Transform, please subscribe to our channel. Please like the videos, and please share them with people you think may benefit from hearing the information that we give.
We'd love for you to comment and let us know more material that you'd like to hear about. It also helps YouTube share our channel with other people. So be sure to comment on what you like and what you'd like to hear more of.
We can't wait to see you. Pretty much this is a live soap opera. But I think the main point that we see is God has a plan, and man will sometimes get off the path that God has for him. But regardless of our sin, our poor decisions, our selfishness and pride, God will get his plan done regardless. And so even through all the madness, we continue to see that this plan of making Abraham and his lineage a great nation and a great people, and then ultimately the Messiah coming through that lineage, has been put in place by God, and it will come to fruition based on God's plan and his sovereignty and his power.
Mm-hmm. And I think as believers, this should be very encouraging to us because, we all make mistakes, and we can trust that God can correct it. There may be some consequences, just like we're going to see today with Jacob, but it can be corrected. But we don't have the ability to mess up what God's doing. We can inflict consequences on ourselves.
Right. You make a real hard path that wasn't right. necessarily that hard.
Right. And so I think that's comforting, though, because then we know if we're seeking the Lord, it will work out. Even if we mess up from time to time, or we have a season of doubt and worry, we can get back to where God wants us by seeking him. And that's what we're seeing play out in this family story, because so far they have all made a mess of what God told them to do.
So Jacob, basically it ended last week with Jacob and Esau being in this situation where Esau was like, I hate you and I'm going to kill you. And Rebecca is like, son, you need to go back to our homeland where I came from, Haran, where my brother lives, and go live with my brother, because if you stay here, your brother's going to kill you. And I think pretty much Esau was just waiting till Isaac died to then avenge this stealing of his birthright and his blessing. So his mom sends him off. So that's what we're going to pick up. So Jacob is now traveling, and we're picking up in Genesis 28, verse 10. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of this place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. You're like, a stone? Every time I read this, I'm like, what is going on that somebody's going to lay on a stone? I mean, that just blows my mind. I mean, you said something before about how crazy it is that these luxuries we take for granted. Mm-hmm. This dude's sleeping on a stone. Mm-hmm. That is insane to me. I barely want to sit on a stone. Your backside hurts. Right. He's laying his head on it.
Right, to sleep. So you're like,
yeah, really. And I'm like, that aside, I didn't mean to get...
This is why I don't camp, because I'm like, I do need a bed and a pillow. Right. And here he is with a stone.
And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So now he's having this vision, and he's seeing. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you, your offspring, and in you and your offspring shall all families of the earth be blessed. All right. This is sounds exactly like and is a repetition of the Abrahamic covenant. This is the Lord coming back to another one of the family lineages. Now, God is reiterating the promise, and he's basically saying, I am God. And I said this before, I'm reminding you, and we know he knows about this, right? Jacob has heard this from his father, and his grandfather told his father. And they're sharing these, it's not a prophecy, but these promises of God and the truth that will happen in their life. And God is actually coming back to him specifically and telling him exactly what he's already been told by his fathers and his parent and his grandfather.
Which was his intent when he told his mother, when he was in the womb, that the older would serve the younger. And this is God actually telling that child what he told his mother when he was in the womb.
He said the dust of the earth. Like, so there's going to be millions, well, billions of you. Like, there's going to be a ton of you. Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised to you, or I've promised you. So, again, God is saying, until it is done, I'm not leaving. And this is the same as when God went between those animal pieces that were cut in half, and he went through by himself, basically signing the covenant with himself, saying, I know I will keep my end. I'm not going to have you come through here. I will do this myself. Again, I will make sure that this happens. I will not leave you until what I have promised you happens. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. So as he's coming through, he realizes, man, God is speaking to me. The presence of the Lord is heavy right here. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And so he's looking into the heaven. He sees the Lord there speaking. He has angels ascending and descending this ladder. And it's like letting us know that this is the supernatural meeting the natural. This is where God is working back and forth between the two realms and making this promise. And God's like, I've got the power to make this happen. I'm allowing you to see into the other side and know that I'm in full control. Everything that happens on earth is based on what I'm doing in this supernatural realm. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at first. So Bethel means house of the Lord. He just said previously, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. And that's what Bethel means. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way, in the way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. So he's at the point now where he's saying all these things, and he's giving this tithe, and he finishes it with this tithe. And all that you give me, I will give you a full tenth. Now, the way it sounds is like he's almost like, if you do this, then I'll give you a tenth. But we know that tithing works like, I'm going to give you a tenth because everything is yours, right? I don't care what you have and what you give. You're not giving God anything. It's his in the first place. All you're doing is giving back to the one who gave to you. We are stewards of what God has given us. So if we give him 10% or 20% or 30%, you can't outgive God because it was his in the first place. He's just allowing you to use it and have it, and we're supposed to be using it to build his kingdom. Mm-hmm. And that's the main point. So as you look at this tithe, that's really the mindset. It's like, God, you're with me. You're for me. You're fighting for me. You're going ahead of me. I'm going to give you a tenth of what you've already given me. And we should have the same mindset. Before you worry about all this other stuff, you got to pay for, I got my bills and my mortgage and my car. No. First thing you do is give to God, and then all that other stuff will be blessed because God comes first because it was his in the first place. Mm-hmm. That's the way we should be looking at it. But I do like how they bring this up again, because this is the second time that we see the tithe. Mm-hmm. That it's not even commanded for you to do at this point. It's not like God made these commandments. This is just something that they have done again on their own, is tithe to the Lord. Mm-hmm. So we're going to pick up in 29:15 through 26.
Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing?
Well, I guess we should pick up real quick because we jumped ahead. So he's on the trip and he actually gets to Haran. He sees Rachel, Laban's daughter. that's his cousin, and he sees her, goes back, talks to Laban, and is like, my mom has sent me back here. He's, realizes it's his family. And so they're having this conversation, and where we're picking up, he's asking him about his servant, because Jacob starts serving him first. He starts working for him. So Laban starts to ask him where we're picking up now. So that's where we're at.
Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give her to you that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her.
All right, so it's clear right now. It starts off talking about how beautiful Rachel was, and how Leah, I don't know if her eyes were weak means that she didn't look that good or she couldn't see that well. Whatever it was, he wasn't feeling the same way about Leah as he did about Rachel. He liked Rachel. He loved it. It clearly tells us here he loved her. Mm-hmm. So, all right, we can pick up there. But those are some keys right there as we're looking at this whole work thing.
Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? Laban said, it is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn.
All right, so clearly we have another instance of deceit. Mm. He knew good and well he was not about to give him Rachel for the first 7 years. It wasn't this custom. Now, that may have been their custom, but if that's the case, he should have told him that. Mm-hmm. He should have been like, well, my oldest is Leah, and I can't give Rachel away till I give her away first, if that was the custom. Now, all he told him was, work 7 years for me, and I'll give you my daughter. And he knew he wasn't giving her the daughter he wanted.
But we also see, Jacob's name is Deceiver, so now he's been deceived.
And we also, the other weird part to me is, how in the world do you not know it's Leah when she comes into you? I'm like, she came, now, yeah, it's dark and she's got a veil on and it's night and, he doesn't realize till the next morning, but something about that to me, I feel like you would know it's not the person you thought it was. But clearly he didn't, so we're going to go along with it. The other thing is, she was given a female servant, which was part of their custom in that day. The father would give his daughter one of the female servants, and so she would have her own servant.
Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years.
All right, so Laban has this idea, well, cool, just wait 1 week, and then you can marry my... So finish this wedding week, and then if you promise to work 7 more years, I'll give you my other daughter at the end of this week. So I'll give you to her now, but or her to you now, but you just have to then work 7 more years. So he does. Jacob's like, okay, so then at the end of the week, so now he has Rachel, and then he's going to work these other 7 years. And he goes into her. Mm-hmm. And then he serves him for these other years. And she also gets a female servant as well. This is all kinds of crazy going on here. Mm-hmm. So he's given 2 of his daughters as wives. He's put in 14 years of service. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have anything. He was sleeping on a rock. So he didn't have anything to give. Mm-hmm. Not like the servant came earlier for Isaac to get Rebecca. And he came with gold and, silver and robes and all this beautiful stuff. Well, Jacob has nothing. So he's like, all right, I'm going to have to work for these. Mm-hmm. Now, the other idea here is this having multiple wives. Does the Bible condone this? No. God told us in Genesis 2 what marriage is. 1 wife, 1 man for life. one husband, one wife for life, however you want to say it. This is not, God is not telling us what to do here. This is a story, meaning it's a historical account of what happened. Just because people are sinning and doing the wrong thing doesn't mean the Bible says you should sin. God told us what to do. Now they're doing something different, so they're being disobedient, and we see the consequences and some, I won't say the wrath of God, but we see consequences in these people's lives based on the sin that's in their life. So somebody said it, I like to think of it this way. The Bible is prescriptive and descriptive. We have to look and see where God says, this is what you do. I'm commanding you to do this. That's prescriptive. Descriptive is, this is what the people did. And that's where we go, okay, that's not what we're supposed to do. He's just telling us what they did. Like, God doesn't tell us to have slaves. The people just had slaves. That doesn't mean the Bible's condoning slavery, like people say.
Yeah, and one thing we can be sure of is that God never changes. And so if he said it once, it stands. Because he's not going to then go back. He's not going to define marriage in Genesis and then change it later. It doesn't change. God doesn't change. Nothing he says changes. And so that's one way. If God said it, you know that you can trust it because it will be that way for all eternity. And so that's another way to determine whether something is prescriptive or descriptive. Clearly, these people were living in a lot of sin, just as we see in our world today. And so just because they were doing it, people will cherry pick scriptures and say, well, look what was going on here. God didn't okay it. He's just telling you what happened.
Right. And then people will say, well, why did he allow them to keep going? Well, why does he allow you or me to keep going? I mean, last I checked, all of us have sinned at some point, and God didn't just say, all right, I'm going to kill you now. I'm going to allow you to die because you sinned. No, God tries to get us back on the path that he had for us, like we said, and he will, because his plans will not be thwarted by man. So we have to have the same kind of grace for them that God had for them, and God has for us, which is, even though you veer off the path, God continues to forgive you and give you an opportunity to repent and turn back to him. And that's what he's doing here. He's given these people, even though to us it looks crazy the way they're living, he's given them opportunities to repent and turn back to him.
And he's using them and their sinful ways to bring about his plan. He doesn't need our perfection to bring it around. He can use evil means to bring about good, because he can do anything he wants. So in spite of their sin, he's still bringing forth his plan.
So we're going to pick up in chapter 29, verse 31. So this is talking about Jacob's children, right? So now we're going to start seeing where he's having children. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb. So we know, and she was hated. He didn't really like her, and clearly Rachel's not going to like her sister who's married to her husband, which, like, again, we said seems really crazy, but it is what it is. That's what was going on. But Rachel was barren. All right, so again, these are the people that God is supposed to make this whole lineage go through. They're going to be as numerous as the dust of the earth, the sand of the seashore, but yet these women continually barren. But then all of a sudden, God blesses them and opens their womb or whatever. So we see the hand of God moving this whole time. So Rachel's barren, and Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. So she's going to keep naming these sons, and she's naming them based off her emotions, how she feels. Like, their name means how she felt at this moment. And if we notice, she keeps talking about her husband loving her or caring about her. She conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. So it's always about this hatred, this love, this desire for Jacob to care for her. Again, she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name will be called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. All right, so she has 4 sons. So we're on our way. We got 4 sons. And she's naming them based on her emotions and her feelings about her and her relationship with Jacob.
And I think it's interesting too here, because Leah didn't ask for any of this. Her dad gave her to someone who didn't want her. Now, should Jacob have responded to her this way? Probably not, but he didn't want her. Her dad, gave her away. So it sounds through these scriptures that she's taking those issues to the Lord and saying, He hates me. Why am I like this? Because with each child, she's praising the Lord that he heard her, that he saw her, that he's attached to her, that he's listening. And she's also at the same time asking for her husband to love her. So I think, that's Leah's response is what we should do is seek the Lord.
She's kind of caught in the crossfire, really.
Yeah. When someone doesn't love you, if your dad was horrible to you as a child, if your spouse has cheated on you, like whatever, the Lord will right all wrongs. And so to me, she's an example of taking these things to the Lord and saying, he saw me, he heard me. Because she is the innocent bystander in all this.
And it shows you that when you get to your lowly place, that sometimes that's when you would only seek the Lord. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if she was able to bear children and he loved her, she wouldn't. I don't know. But I'm just saying a lot of times God allows us to get to these lowly places because that's when we'll actually seek him and actually find him too. Because if you're not seeking, you can't find. But a lot of people just don't naturally seek the Lord. It's usually when you get into a situation where you can't fairly destitute and you need the Lord's help. Chapter 30, we're not going to sit here and read it all, but 1 through 24 is like, it's just back and forth between these two having children and being barren, and Rachel's barren, so then she gives him her servant, and then he has a couple children with the servant. Then she's not barren anymore, and then she has them, and then Leah has a few, and it's like then she gives her servant, and it's really a look back on what their parents and grandparents have done. It's almost like a generational curse or a generational sin, where this whole mindset where, okay, if God's not moving, but he told us this is going to happen, then we're going to manufacture it through man-made ways. Like, okay, cool. Like, if we're barren as a couple, then I'll get the maidservant and I'll have a baby with her and that'll be our baby. But really, it's not. It's her baby. And so you're trying to do what God said he was going to do because you're not being patient and wait. And I get it. If your wife's barren, you're like, well, how are we going to do all these things you just told me, even though God keeps promising them? So they just really took matters into their own hands, and it gets kind of wild.
And I have to imagine that God spoke to Abraham that Jacob would make the 12 nations of Israel. His children would be the leaders of the tribes of the 12 nations of Israel. I would imagine that his plan for that was that he would marry one woman, because that's God's design, and they would have 12 children. That's not the path they chose. And so we see this back and forth. We see Leah caught in all of this hatred and, being left out. And then we see, well, now I've got to give him my servant because now she's had a son and I'm not having any sons. And all this stuff that is so unnecessary. And I think, gosh, our human condition is to jump right in front of God and do what we think he's trying to do, but I guess he can't. So I in my flesh will do it for him.
It's pretty wild to think that this is God was able to get the 12 tribes out of all this madness.
Right.
But like you said, if you think, you're like, well, what would have happened if they would have just done it God's way? Like, what would that have looked like?
The whole world would be different. Because you also think if Abraham hadn't done it his way, we wouldn't have Ishmael. You would only have Isaac. And so now we have
which Ishmael, in case you didn't remember, is born of Hagar,
right? His
servant. So it's like they're doing the same thing as their parents did.
All this conflict. That's why sin is ever abounding in our world, because we choose our way over God's way. Because if each of them had done it God's way, there are still problems in our world today because of things they did thousands of years ago. And so it makes me think, what choices am I making in my life that are causing problems in my life because that's what I chose to do?
So at this point, a lot has happened, and we're going to jump up to chapter 35. But as you look at this, we now have we're coming toward having the 12 tribes, or 12 sons, which end up being the 12 tribes of Israel. And ultimately, this does come to an end. 35, verse 16 through 18. They journeyed from Bethel when they were still some distance from Ephrath. Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And her soul was departing from her, for she was dying. She called his name Ben-Oni. but his father called him Benjamin. So there's always, meanings behind these names, but that's her last, Benjamin. Now, before they left and were heading back, she had Joseph, which like you were talking about earlier, they had favorites, and he was one of the favorites.
Joseph was Jacob's favorite because he's the first child from Rachel, his favorite wife, and so he was the favored one. And so now they're going back and they have him, and now she has another son who we see later in scripture becomes his favorite because he thinks Joseph is dead.
And he's the youngest, and so he's like, not Benjamin, you're not taking Benjamin. And so it's just, again, to the point we made earlier, it's just the sin and the deception and then the madness of all this stuff. But the cool part is now we see these 12 sons, and we see where God was going with this. The 12 tribes will come from these 12, each son will be a tribe. And we know Joseph, as we get into it later, Joseph will be the one that goes away and then brings his family to Egypt, and all that stuff stems from this. And that's just, to me, it's crazy to think about that, because that's God's sovereignty. Like, how are we going to get to this with all these people doing all these crazy things, yet we still there? God's still like, no, I didn't get off the throne. I'm still there. I got full control of all this.
And I think this should encourage us that no matter where we are, what we're going through, no matter what it looks like, God is in control. He's sovereign. And he can fix anything. He can make anything happen. He can do whatever he wants. And we have to trust that. And we have to lean into the fact that no matter what we've done, God can fix it. How he chooses to fix it is not our choice. How things will get worked out is not our choice. It's his. But we can have hope, and we can relax and be joyful that it will work out. And I mean, we're still in Genesis, and we're seeing all these things that God is doing. And, we haven't even gotten to Jesus.
And people are doing too.
Right. We haven't even gotten to the birth of Jesus. We're still in Genesis. So many things that are going on. And God continues to work through the madness and bring about his plan.
So you can look at this and say, well, I shouldn't get too high or too low or too up or down about my situation in life, because ultimately it looks like, based off what we're seeing, that God doesn't still allow you too far from his plans, regardless of what you try to do. Now, you can make your life a little more miserable than it has to be, as we can see, because if you just did God's plan the first way, or the easier way, but at the same time, God always brings you back. So this is another way that we can say, don't just be transformed, live transformed. Because if you live transformed, you're going to do it God's way. You're going to live a life that looks like honoring God and doing what God says. And maybe there won't be as many consequences or, turns off the path where God has to kind of pull you back to where he was taking you in the first place. But now you got all this baggage with you because you had to add a little bit to the trip. And if we're living transformed, it's like we try to hear God, we try to honor him. Even if we make mistakes, when we're trying to honor him, right? Because God looks at the heart, then it's much easier for him to kind of draw us back and keep us on the straight and narrow where we need to be in the first place.
Unfortunately, some of us wait till we're at the bottom of the pit to seek him and get drawn back. And then it's not that you can't be, it's just the journey's going to be longer. And so, we challenge you to seek him, follow him, do what he says, and make your life glorify him, so that you're not getting so far off the path.
So we thank you for joining us today. And next week, we're going to get more into Jacob's trip or journey back to Canaan. We love you and look forward to seeing you next week.